Chapter 3. A liquid lunch with a couple of piss artists. After the sad departure of Mr. Devlin and old Harry, following their part in the events of that night, with Mr. Devlin literally with his pants down, old Harry trying very hard to get into the same position, and their subsequent discovery by the policeman, life became a lot more interesting. For a start, I decided to stay in Liverpool, despite unhappy memories of what other people call family, but to me was something else. The nearest thing being the relationship piglets have to the sow. Part of my new regime was a change of living quarters, but moving into Claudia's flat was more difficult than I thought, because the removal people were reluctant to go anywhere near her new address. Bit reluctant to go there, riots and that. Never know what you're going to come across. Fires in the street and looting. Sometimes they turn the wagon over for a barricade so they can throw stones at the coppers like. That bleeding Liverpool 8 like, Ace. It's not the French Revolution. It's not Belfast, I said. But that's not the point. I knew he was someone who wasn't necessarily interested in the complexities of argument or history. So you're reluctant, to go there. I needed to sound him out. There was a definite reek of alcohol about him, not just from his breath, but from his skin as well. Only doubt for me was what kind of drink it was. Yes, very reluctant, he said. He was a big fella, and sweating out all that alcohol all right, mopping his forehead with what looked like a dead man's handkerchief. How reluctant, I said. The handkerchief moved quicker across his brow. He was making it clear that he was thinking, like they do in films. Well, it'll have to be at least 20 quid reluctant, like. Cash on the friggin' nail, Ace. When he said this, he pushed his cap off the front of his head to make him look hard. What this bastard was saying was, "You're one hard bugger, all right, half speed. Yes, you are, you tough little git, no doubt about that." I told him I only had a tenner. "I tell you what, Ace, you get us a bit of scoff, all right, but it'll have to be liquid scoff, like what they call a liquid lunch. Tommy and me are going to be guaranteed to have a liquid lunch, alright, Lise? Liquid lunch, okay? Liquid as in ale, and lunch as in 5 pints. So how quick can you get it done?" I asked. "Listen, mate, speed by name, speed by nature, alright? It'll take about 3 hours, Tommy?" But Tommy declined to answer. I could see only the top of his head in the cab. He was like some kind of mystery man. I couldn't figure out the arrangement with half speed, but he said he was going to do the job. That was the main thing. Saved me a lot of messing around with taxis and things to move my stuff as well. To be absolutely exact, it wasn't me that was doing the moving. The thing was, after all the business in the Eagle was over and done with, Claudia decided to leave the job anyway and concentrate on her family life with Leroy, now that he was out of his period of captivity. What she did was move a few armchairs and ornaments and things and stick them in the cleaner's room in the Eagle. Of course, if Mr. D had been around, Claudia would have been for the chop for unprofessional conduct, as he would have called it. The armchairs were a bit bulky, but they were very comfortable, and I slept in the cleaner's room myself one day when I didn't fancy hanging around the pierhead or going to the Odeon to see Nightmare on Lime Street Part 4, The Disemboweling. So that's why I was involved in the move on Claudia's behalf, and how I got myself into the cab with Mr. Speed by name, Speed by nature. The thing was, he was drunk. His colleague, Tommy, just sat there drinking from a can of Kaltenberg lager, while Mr. Speed drove the wagon from hotel to Claudia's council house like an escaped maniac, or like Herodotus would have described the Persian army if they had lorries at the time of Xerxes' invasion of Greece. The lorry hit the curbside about 3 times and skidded in a pool of water once. And another time I thought he'd squashed a mother and baby, but she managed to pull herself and the pram out of the way just at the last minute, screaming, Jesus Christ, how the bloody hell. But by then the wagon had shot off and I couldn't lip read anymore. I tell you what, get me and Tommy a bit of lunch, like, you know, what we were talking about earlier, liquid lunch. Don't look so friggin' puzzled. We'll give you a bit of a discount on the bill, he said, as we pulled up outside some desolate pub somewhere only approximately on the way to Claudia's. I didn't think I had a lot of choice. It was like being the court advisor in the last days of the Ottoman Empire, advising the Sultan to stick to the rice pudding in case the kebabs were off. All right, I said. Good lad, Ace. Can see you're one of us, eh, Tommy? Said Mr. Half-Speed. Tommy didn't say anything to that, but he turned to me and told me he'd drank a draft lager and a bottle of pills in a pint glass. Speed wanted a pint of draft Guinness. I had a small whiskey, because I knew I'd have to keep my wits about me. It was one of those places where the jukebox had a nice selection of country and western music, going back about 40 years, with records by Hank Snow and Hank Williams and a few other Hanks. While I was looking at the selection, the manager said something about why didn't I play something by Hank Snow. So I said I was just looking, that I was just curious. That's a good one as well, that. Only curious. Can't for the friggin' life of me remember who made it, though. The joke seemed to keep him going on for a while. Every now and then he'd mutter, only curious, and laugh to himself. I'd look around the pub for anyone else to join him, but he was in bad luck there. Even though this pub landlord was fat and ugly and had brown stains under the armpits of his Bry nylon shirt, I didn't feel any sympathy for the man, or his job in this desolate pub, and even less when I experienced his sense of humour. I didn't need to worry about being put down in front of anybody though, because there was only Half-Speed, Tommy and me, apart from the fat landlord in the pub, and Alf and Tommy were playing on the now £4 payout machine. Their brains needed fuel, no doubt about that, because all I could hear from the corner was the bleep bleep and shuddering noise of the machine. It took them 4 points each before any words came out. Even then it was just obscenities as they kept losing. That machine's a pile of frickin' shit, Speed said to the landlord on his way to the toilet. Well, it does the business, get it? Business, you know, like feces, stools. I mean, you did say shit before. Ha ha ha. How about if I whirl my fist in your friggin' gob, Ace? Alf said. That seemed to do the trick, as the landlord's sense of humour was concerned. He kept quiet as Alf and Tommy drank their 5th pint and didn't flinch when they started to kick the now £4 payout machine. Just as we were leaving, the machine paid out to a little old lady who'd just wandered in and tried with 1 10-pence piece. Shit, said Tommy. God bless you, love, said Alf to the old lady, patting her on the shoulder as she shovelled the coins into her bag. See you, Alf, said the fat landlord. Yeah, see you, Wally, said Alf. It was a bit of a surprise to discover that they knew each other, because Alf was certainly no fan of Wally's devastating sense of humour. So you know him, I said. Yeah, Wally's one of life's unalterable shithouses. Anyway, I'm pissed. Your turn to drive, Tommy. I'm pissed as well, said Tommy, but I love driving. We did get to Claudia's place safely. Tommy did nothing wrong, but I suppose if he drives at 6 miles an hour you probably wouldn't do, would you? Me and Claudia got started on the business of moving the things into the house after Alf and Tommy went for a leak upstairs. After the strong sound of cascading water, we expected their help, but they never came down. In the end, we had to do everything ourselves. I went upstairs to see if there was a problem, but they were okay. They'd just fallen asleep on the big double bed in Claudia's room. The snoring woke Evangeline, and she came downstairs.
Mum, who are those two men sleeping on your bed? They're making a loud noise. Snoring, love, they're only snoring. That Rip Van Winkle? Yeah, that's right. You're a clever girl. But who are they, Mum? Why are they there together? Oh, they're dog tired, love. A dog? I've never seen a dog do that, Mum. You see what I mean, Ted?
Said Claudia.
About kids being inquisitive. I could keep going on all day now, answering their questions about those two lazy bastards. I don't want to hear the kid, you know.
They've been moving stuff for your mum, I said, and they need to sleep to recover their strength. They're snoring so they can get all the oxygen they need into their bloodstream. It's a way of recovering their strength.
They're drunk,
said Evangeline.
like Mr. Wilkins.
Jimmy Wilkins, said Claudia.
One of our neighbours in Catherine Street.
She's right. He was a bit of a... She leaned over to me, but I stopped her before she whispered, because I guessed what she was going to say.
Now they're just tired, love. You go and play somewhere else and keep out of their way.
So we got the job finished, without the help of the two lazy bastards. And just as we got the last bit into the house, I could hear loud cascading noises again from the toilet, and I knew they were up and about. Alf Speed and his mate seemed to have the knack of making life convenient for themselves, even when they were supposed to be making it convenient for the people who were paying them. It didn't really seem fair. When Alf Speed and Tommy came downstairs, rubbing their eyes ferociously like little children do, I said, listen, Claudia's going to make some tea for us, some steak and kidney pie and stuff, but you're not getting any money off us. We've done all the work, and I spent a fortune in the pub this afternoon, so that's it. I mentioned the pie because I love the stuff, God knows why.
All right by me, as long as the tea's good, like. We don't care, do we, Tommy?
No, said Tommy. Liver and onions or just liver by itself? Actually, I said steak and kidney pie. Oh, shit.
Actually, I said steak and kidney pie, said Ted. But if liver and onions your bag, it's all right by me. Could even stretch to a tin of beer,
said Claudia. Well, it turns out that steak and kidney pie is one of Leroy's favourite meals anyway. The liver and onions being kicked into touch by myself and Alf Speed. Kind of good luck there. So when he got back, we sat down together on the chairs and tea chests that were still knocking around and ate away like pigs. No talking, and all over in about 10 minutes. I noticed that Alf Speed kept looking in Leroy's direction, examining his hair, which was in the dreadlock fashion. I don't know whether he was frightened or curious, but his eyes were stuck to it. I don't suppose he'd ever seen anyone like Leroy at close quarters before. Same for me. I'd never been close to a Rastafarian before I met Leroy.
Don't mind me asking, do you, Ace, but one of these you're one of these Rastafarians we keep hearing about all the time, like.
There's truth in the words, man. Ja Rastafari.
Okay, Leroy, just answer the man's question, said Claudia.
The thing about Leroy is that he speaks two different languages. One is a kind of religious thing, and the other is just like anyone else.
Yeah, I'm a Rasta and I can tell you it's a friggin' pain. Think I'm going to have to cut the bud button.
Yeah, I'm a Rasta and I can tell you it's a friggin' pain. I think I'm gonna have to cut the bastard lot off. I'll never get a job like this. Even the black man don't like me, you know.
What's your language, man? Child is here, you know.
No doubt about Claudia's view of children. Bring them up clean and teach them how to live. Wish that lazy, malingering bitch back in Facalazy had the same approach to me. Might be somewhere now, might be at university or in London or anything.
So you haven't got a job?
Said Alf Speed.
Employment in this place? That's got to be a joke. You only good at driving? Any skill with the old steering wheel and foot pedals like Ace? You could say that. You could say that alright, Claudia. Driving all our time in captivity, you see. You what? It's a long story, said Claudia. Yeah, about 3 years and 2 months long, said Leroy. But I still got my licence. Right, how would you fancy working for us? Take a bit of responsibility off us on the driving side, you know. And that's how Leroy got work as Alf's chief driver. I suspected this job opportunity for Leroy had something to do with Alf and Tommy liking a bit of a drink at lunchtime, followed by a deep sleep in the house of complete strangers. I couldn't see Leroy lying in bed with these two characters though. His hair would get all tangled up, I thought. The thing is, work is not particularly interesting since Claudia left. There's no laughs now. Even the spirits of their clientele seem to have dropped a bit. Some of the homosexuals have stopped coming, if that's a way to express it. There are a lot of rooms left empty these days, and it gets gloomy at night. No excitement, no thrills. I suppose in some sick, perverse kind of way, I miss Mr. D and old Harry. At least there was something to dislike with them, being such warped individuals, not unlike my own family. But we won that battle, and they had to go. When things like that happen, and you lose as much as you gain, it's what the Greeks would have referred to as a Pyrrhic victory. The new management has been making the place run more efficiently, or so they tell us. They started off something they call staff accountability, a way of making sure everything is done properly without any fiddles or messing around. The other thing they do all the time is collect figures and make statistics. If we want to make a case for refurbishment, we've just got to have those figures. How can we do it otherwise? That's what Alan, call me Al, Butterweight, had said. Mr. Butter, as I call him, is the new manager, and I have to admit he's much friendlier than Mr. D, but he doesn't have the same evil charisma. He's just a decent bloke with an excessive amount of energy. Anyway, everyone's got to fill in an A6 form when they stay in the hotel, so the management can sort it all out in the main office and build up the statistics. Funny thing is, of course, they have no idea why people actually use the place. There's no question on the form asking what the purpose of their stay is, namely contact with the client genitalia, drinking, arguing, or whatever. I got a letter the other day addressed to Ted, night porter, Eagle Hotel. Just when I was thinking that everything was beginning to settle down, become boring in fact. Anyway, the letter read, Packies and coons equals riots. Crime, slums, mugging, drugs, hatred. What are you and your black friend going to do about it? Signed, a True Blue. It was made up of bits and pieces of print, just like you see in those tele-crime things, the kidnap, ransom or blackmail note to the effect we saw with you in the... fuck what? It was made up of bits of pieces of print, just like you see in those crime telly things, you know, the kidnap, ransom or the blackmail note to the effect that we saw you with the girl, how about coughing up some reddies?
You never expect anything like that to happen to yourself, only to other people who deserve it anyway. And to tell the truth, I did feel a bit funny about it, because it's strange to think that someone has got you on their mind when you're just going about your daily business, making tea or going to the toilet. Your ears are supposed to burn when other people are talking about you. But what part of your body burns when they're just thinking about you, or composing letters and cutting up pieces of a newspaper and magazine to do it? The other thing is, I reckon it must have come from either Mr. D or old Harry. Who else would bother to do anything like that? And who else would know about me and that I work in the Eagle? It doesn't take the brain of Sherlock Holmes to figure out that it's someone who knows me and someone who probably doesn't like me all that much. Mind you, old Harry and Mr. D never knew that I was behind the whole business that got rid of them, so why should they bother? How could they know the whole thing was a setup and that the detectives who happened to be at the hotel at the time were fake, and that the whole business was a complete piece of acting? Maybe someone tipped them off, although I'm pretty sure we all agreed not to talk about it. Anyway, I'm not going to tell anyone about it, least of all Leroy. He'd explode, and his language would get abusive, and Claudia would have to clown him down, and one thing would lead to another, and we'd probably end up at the pub one lunchtime with Alf Speed and Tommy, who would try and introduce us to all the pleasures of being human dredgers. Then I wouldn't get to work, and I'd get my pay docked, so I'll keep quiet for the time being. Leroy is settling down to roots, as he calls it, with the I woman, Claudia in other words. No more captivity in a Babylon prison. Why is the caged with steel and stones? I remember him singing that the other week when he had a few hours between jobs away from the pub with Alf Speed and Tommy. But apart from his singing, family life at Claudia's new place is super cool and ace, as Alf would say. I know there's no problem with me, what with me being a different colour, i.e. a different race. All that side of things doesn't matter here. Claudia and Leroy got time for anyone, so I felt accepted. Of course, compared to my own family, this is like being the son of a Roman senator. A bit of comfort and privilege, like. I mean, I couldn't wait to get away from the bunch of low-life scoundrels that, because of genetic factors, I got born into. The main time we get together now is afternoon, because I have to be at work by about 7 o'clock. Leroy gets the odd afternoon to himself when the pressing needs of Alf Speed regime have overtaken the normal daily business of making money. In other words, if Alf gets too pissed, he gets Leroy the afternoon off. So, when we do get these afternoons together, we have a meal or something like that. A couple of weeks ago, Leroy had said that he'd have enough of Babylon consumerism food, and he had planned to cook us a roots meal. Thought at first it was going to be carrots and turnips and stuff like that, underground food. But he said, "Come, brother Ted, we go find the Ital food, man." I didn't know what he meant. I must have looked blankly at him, because he said, "It's all right, we're just going through the shops, okay?" "What are you getting?" Claudia said. "Just some food. I cook the tea, no problem," he said. "Well, who's a good little boy then?" said Claudia. We went down to Granbury Street, where most of the shops are, the shops that Leroy wanted. Most of them seem to be run by the one company, Halal. That Halal's a big organisation, Leroy. Are they just in the meat business, or do they have any hotels or anything? I said. You could say they run a religion. What, they actually have their own kind of religion? Ah, you stupid bastard, you don't know what halal is then. When he told me, I felt downright stupid, but you can't know everything, can you? Anyway, we darted into a number of places, but ended up in Ali's supermarket. It was the most crowded shop I've ever been in, and I couldn't recognise any of the food or vegetables on display. Piles of green leaves in boxes, believe it or not, green bananas that you'd probably have to wait for months to get them ripe. Great big roots, and I hoped it wasn't just going to be them that we had for the meal. There were packets of all kinds of beans and spices, tins of funny looking Chinese fish, little packets of salted fish that smelt kind of embarrassing and personal. But Leroy seemed to know his way around this store like a second home. He picked up some of the large roots, filthy on the outside, but a kind of cream colour where it was cut. "Yellow yam, man, the best there is," he said to me as he put it in the basket. He took a bunch of the long green bananas and must have guessed what was going on in my brain. "No, man, not bananas. Plantain. Very nice fried." Then he picked a few tiny, crinkled red and yellow fruits. "For fuck's sake, man, don't touch these without an asbestos suit on. Burn the friggin' mouth off you. Country peppers.